One of the big challenges with LinkedIn advertising is it's more expensive than other advertising channels, at least in terms of the metrics that people typically measure. So things like cost per click, for example, if you're coming from Google ads or Facebook ads, are going to be much higher on LinkedIn. Now, when you actually look at the metrics in terms of what performs well in terms of actually generating customers and getting those high value accounts, you might find that LinkedIn is cheaper in terms of profitability. But one of the key reasons that LinkedIn becomes expensive is because people aren't actually targeting the right people. And as much as you think that you may have the right targeting parameters set up, you might have the right custom list, really what you need to do is audit your campaigns to make sure that the right people are receiving the ads. And the way you do that is with this feature called demographics. So you can do this at the level of all the campaign groups or individual campaigns, whatever you wish. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to stay with all the campaign groups and select demographics. And what this is going to do is it's going to tell me precisely who is receiving my ads to see if I'm wasting money on people who may not be relevant. So one of the key things here is make sure that you have the right time frame. So I'm just putting all time. This is just one of my personal campaigns instead of a client of mine or a company that I've worked for. And the first thing we're going to look at here is job function. And this is where a lot of beginner LinkedIn advertisers or mediocre ones fall short, and it's because they tend to hit people that are in sales, because there's a heavy bias on LinkedIn towards people that are in sales because they're using LinkedIn regularly to send emails, to send messages, connection requests, etc., if they're not automating it with a tool such as Lemlist. So that's something that you need to consider. If you do see that there are a lot of salespeople receiving the impressions, getting the clicks, etc., and they're not your target persona, then you can set that up as negative targeting. Now, depending on how you've set up your campaign, you can either exclude sales as a function if you're targeting based on function, or you can set it up as specific job titles if you're targeting people based on job title. But you'll not be able to do those simultaneously. So LinkedIn will prevent you from doing negative targeting based on function if you're doing positive targeting based on job title, and vice versa. So some of the considerations here would be excluding sales. I would also consider excluding things like human resources or some of these support roles that may not be relevant to what you're marketing. Now, obviously, if you're marketing something like Zendesk, you're probably going to want to hit human resources. But the legal department, like, are you really at the early stages of marketing a product going to need to get it signed off by the lawyer? Probably not, unless maybe, it's legal tech, and I've worked in legal tech, so that's quite possible. You may find you're hitting, people that work in healthcare, but really that's not the space you're playing in. But job function is not the only thing. You can also look at the individual job titles. And what you may find is, hey, we're getting a lot of activity here from chief executive officers, lots of impressions. You may also find that the click-through rate is particularly high with certain subsets. So, hey, it looks like my click-through rate's higher with directors. I have no definitive conclusions from that, but maybe it's possible that I was targeting the wrong people. Maybe it's more relevant to directors and CEOs just going too high. That's a mistake business-to-business companies make when they're selling to enterprise, is they go for the C-suite, but the C-suite just doesn't care. Maybe they need to sign off on it in the end, but in the early stages, it might be more effective going after the directors. So you can see here, with an average click-through rate on LinkedIn, typically around 0.4%. I have over 1% with directors, so that's something that I may want to explore further and do some research. You can take a look at company. Now, the interesting thing about company is you may find that you're actually spending tons and tons of money on specific companies, large companies that are not relevant to you. So look at this. I have 359 impressions just from Amazon. Now, if you're targeting the Fortune 100, fine. That's what you would expect to see. But if you're going after SMBs, you're going after mid-market, then maybe this is a little bit too skewed towards individual companies, individual large companies. And you run into this problem a lot because if you target a specific job title, a specific function, there's naturally going to be a lot of people with those job titles, especially if the job title is very specific. Specific job titles like that are only going to exist in large companies where you have high specialization. So what you can do there is change your targeting so you only select certain either revenue ranges, which is can be done in LinkedIn Sales Navigator, or company headcount, which can be done within the LinkedIn advertising itself to exclude some of these large companies if you wanted to. And maybe you might find there's too many small companies, so you can exclude those. Okay, so let's see what industries we're actually hitting. Okay, software. Okay, I work in the SaaS industry, so hitting software, IT services, internet publishing might make sense. But perhaps IT services is not what I want to hit. So if I'm doing product marketing, then do I really want to go after some of these professional service firms? Perhaps not. That would be something you can consider setting up for negative targeting. Seniority, you may find that people are either too senior or too junior. So if you're going after a function like marketing, for example, there's probably going to be a lot of people that are pretty entry level, mid level. You may not be hitting those senior chief marketing officers that you want to hit. Company size, again, it's done by headcount. You could, as I explained, go into Sales Navigator and target by revenue. That's a new feature. And then what you could do is import that as a custom list into LinkedIn. Let's look at location. Now, I ran a campaign before. This was on Twitter, so not an exact example for this. But what I found was most of the people that were receiving my ad were actually teenage males in India, even though the target market that I was going after was professionals that skewed towards women in North America. So that's an extreme example of how, as much as you think you're doing your targeting right, and in this case, I was targeting the audiences of influencers in North America for these particular professionals I was targeting, and I thought I was doing the targeting accurate. When you actually audit it and look at things like demographics, you may see that there's a disconnect there between who you think you're targeting and who you're actually targeting. So here, for example, you can see I'm still hitting a lot of people outside of North America, which may be fine. Getting these people in India, Canada, the United Kingdom, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. But if your main target's the U.S. and those are the people that tend to buy from you, then you could set up negative targeting there. All right, country/region, again, like location. And you could even get down to the county level, particularly if you're targeting something that's geo-specific, like grocery stores, or you're selling through distributors and suppliers, things like that. So very important to audit your campaigns using the demographics. Demographics, it's a bit of a misnomer. We're not just talking about demographic data. We're also talking about firmographic data. We're talking about things like job titles. It's not necessarily, gender and some of these conventional demographic metrics, but it is one of the most important things to use in your LinkedIn advertising.